What's up, everybody? So, getting down to the meat and potatoes of what I think people were really asking about when they talk about concealed carry stuff. They want to know the guns that we use. And so, got some out here today, guns that I have used, do use, will continue to use, and then some interesting honorable mentions along the way. But this is just an overview so people could get an idea. Really, at the end of the day, I think which gun you pick is somewhat inconsequential as long as it's a gun that you're willing to fight with, is reasonably shootable, reasonably reliable, and reasonably accurate. That means different things for different people. My standard and my expectations of what I want and what I need, what I demand out of a handgun, higher than most. But it's my choice. I get to pick what I want. You get to pick what you want. If you are asking me what I pick, this is what I pick. Now, for you safety sallies at home, if you're waiting for me to safety check all these, you're gonna be waiting a long time. I would say two things to that. One, to quote the late great James Yeager, if treating guns as if they're loaded makes us safer, they might as well just be loaded. I consider carry guns to be separate from competition guns. Carry guns, generally speaking, in and around my systems are loaded, and they stay that way for a variety of reasons, but really one of them being is that carry ammunition is expensive, and every time you chamber around, you are putting wear and tear on that ammunition. Specifically, especially in 1911s, you're putting potentially bullet setback into the cartridge. So every time the bullet hits the feed ramp, it potentially gets a little smaller until the point where it might not be safe to shoot. So one of the things I do in my systems is I mark the back of the case every time I chamber it, and whenever a cartridge has two ticks on it, and I get a magazine full of cartridges that have 2 ticks on them, I shoot them up at that point. Some guns, some ammo gets shot up faster than others. I have some bullets that I think I bought when Obama was president, and some stuff I bought fairly recently. But when I get a representative amount of that stuff to shoot up, sometime at the range I'll shoot it up. But generally speaking, loading and unloading carry guns is not something I do a lot of. And since we're on the educational standpoint here, if you are uncomfortable handling loaded firearms by yourself in a concrete room, maybe you need to evaluate your aptitude for the core concept of what we're talking about. Okay? We're talking about you having a loaded gun in your daily life and doing all of those things. If sitting at a table and making a video is something that would make you uncomfortable, aside from the public speaking aspect of it, maybe you're not ready. Just an observation, only you can decide that. Anyway, primarily guns that I pick, guns that I have used, do use, continue to use, predominantly they are 1911s. Now, that would shock almost nobody who's familiar with me. If you want to know more about what I think about 1911s and how passionate I am about them, we did a whole Vortex Nation podcast on that I'm going to link for you, and you can just get the 1911 skinny over there. This is a continuation of that topic into a specific context, all right? So I am a fan of, like, enjoy, collect 1911s, both as an enthusiast and as an end user. They're what I like to use, so I use them in a private capacity. The only one accountable for my decision, for your decision, is me or you. There are no points for carrying a cool gun, carrying a bigger gun. Nobody really cares. Just a matter of whether it's something you want in and about your person on a daily basis. And that's a really personal choice. It's as personal as, a watch, how the clothes you wear, the shoes you have, the belts you use. I mean, do you wear a backpack? Do you have a satchel? Do you, like, how do you carry your stuff? Like, just your day-to-day stuff, are you an Apple guy or are you an Android guy? It's just one of those personal choices that really only affects you. So only you have to be happy with your choice. Again, as long as a gun checks the boxes of one that it speaks to you enough that you're willing to make it a part of your life. All right. So that you will be reasonably competent with it and have it around. It works. It's reasonably accurate, and you can incorporate it into your daily systems. Doesn't really matter. For me, that's a 1911. For you, it could just as easily be an M&P, a Glock, a whatever. These are what I've gravitated to most often. And so we'll run down some of them. Now, I guess we'll get like some of the elephant in the room out of the way. A lot of them are 45. Not all of them are 45, but certainly ones that I bought early on were 45, and I continue to buy some 45s just as a collector, and that's because 1911s work best as 45s. They were designed as 45s, so like functionally, the magazines work better as 45s. The ammo works better in 45s. You tend to have less finicky issues in 45 than other calibers, which is not to say that other guns by default are finicky, but I tend to watch the sub calibers in 1911s a little bit closer and with a little bit higher level of scrutiny in the smaller calibers. But most of the ones I've bought recently are in 9mm. I don't really care about the caliber. I won't say anything other than anecdotally like 2 World Wars or knockdown power. They don't make a 46. The guns just work better and they feel better. Like recoil wise, they shoot better. They're more fun to shoot in 45. Now, when I shoot 45, most of the time it's my hand loads that I've loaded specifically to major power factor and USPSA, which is a bit watered down even from most of the things you can buy commercially. It's just fun. I just like it. But I can shoot the full power stuff too. But have no illusions about what handgun calibers do and the differences between different handgun calibers. In my professional life, I've gone to a lot of ammo demos for Federal cartridge that Federal does for law enforcement agencies where they shoot bullets into gels, different calibers, different types of bullet design, all that. I'll just boil it all down for you. And basically, if you get shot with a pistol bullet, they do about the same wound cavity-wise as any other caliber. To think that a 45 does anything significantly different than a 9mm is, it's been scientifically debunked at this point. Now, that isn't to say that larger calibers are now obsolete. It's just, we're essentially throwing rocks, big, soft, fast rocks. And you either got shot with a pistol or you got shot with a rifle. If you got shot with a rifle, you're in bad shape. If you get shot with a pistol, really it comes down to, did that bullet hit something vital to the threat's survival, and how long is it going to take for them to perspire from that? So I have no illusions about the different calibers, the different bullets. Bullets is bullets. As long as I have a good representative hollow point, I get different ones, different times. Given a choice, I would choose a federal bullet like an HST or something like that. But I have no qualms about using anything Hornady or anything else really. As long as it's a good, reputable hollow point bullet, and I can get it for a decent price at that time, but usually I prefer Federal or one of the other major brands, but I'm not really pretty particular about the ammo that I select. A lot of people will also point out in 1911s that they're single stack. Now, that is part of what makes 1911s desirable for me, because it kind of gives them this stiletto-like profile, all right? So I can have a full-size or a full-ish size gun, and its shape signature tends to blend well in my body and with the holsters that I want to or can use. This shape of gun with a good holster tends to be comfortable and concealable for me. I have, in chapters of my life, tried to conceal 2011 style pistols, and I can do it, but I would put it kind of in that category of that guy who says he conceals a Desert Eagle. Like, does he really? And that's also like, again, there's no prize for concealing a huge gun. It's just you're concealing a huge gun. Like, pat yourself on the back. But I have actually gave a legitimate effort to conceal carrying my Athena before it wore a big gamer magwell on it, and it just didn't fit into my lifestyle, the clothes I wanted to wear, my systems. It just didn't work for me. It wasn't something I was like, yeah, I'm down with carrying this thing. It was too big. And now you could like get the micrometer out and you could measure and tell me how it's like pretty similar. The shape of it just didn't work for me. And right now it has unreleased product on it, so it can't be on camera. But I have tried to carry 2011s. I just don't prefer it. To me, those are game guns or offensive handguns. People who are full-time SWAT or hostage rescue people who are going forward with handguns, that's an appropriate application for that. But I think it's really, in my opinion, for me, it's a bit too big of form factor for what I'm looking for on a daily basis. So I default back to single stack pistols predominantly, with a few exceptions. That has a limitation in ammunition. Some folks would have some heartburn about the amount of ammunition. I don't really worry about it a whole lot. We could cite, the statistics on like how many shots are fired in civilian self-defense shootings and whatnot. Most of the time, capacity is not an issue. It might be. It's just not something I worry about. And generally speaking, to get more capacity, I have to give up some amount of reliability or concealability. Good example would be the good old-fashioned Glock 19. This is actually a 23 in 40, collective gasp, but representative size of this pistol. So a similar size pistol, to get more capacity, I get more of a blocky shape. And so it just has, some less desirable characteristics to get more capacity when at the end of the day, I'm not shooting a lot. Like, I don't have illusions of this being some big rolling gun battle. So I'm not particularly worried about capacity and giving up rounds or not giving up rounds. Again, I'm not laying down cover fire. I'm not going forward with a pistol. I'm trying to break contact or get out of some situation, not be in some kind of sustained gunfight. So to get the guns that I like and conceal well for me, those happen to be in a single stack. Capacity, I don't feel undergunned with the amount of ammunition that they carry. I do tend to carry a spare magazine. It's kind of optional for me. More often than not, I do carry a spare magazine, even though that weight and that space on my person would probably be better used for diversifying my capability. So instead of carrying more ammunition for this one type of thing that could happen, what about carrying a knife, a fighting knife? Or what about carrying medical, all right, a tourniquet, all right, something like that. Like for the space it takes to carry a magazine on my person, I could carry a completely different genre of equipment, which might be smarter. But I do carry a spare magazine more often than not, or I have them around. The primary reason I do that is not as intuitive, all right? Most people think, oh, spare magazine, more ammunition. Sure, I carry more ammunition because The least reliable part of the whole system, of any handgun system, is the ammo. If you shoot enough ammo, you'll find bad ammo, all right? And bad ammo tends to find you at inconvenient times. So I trust the ammunition, any ammunition from any manufacturer, I trust this the least. So I have redundancy. The second most suspicious part of the whole system is a magazine. At the end of the day, this is a piece of sheet metal with a spring in it. The magazines themselves can get fouled, especially when you carry them a lot, especially if they have all these holes in them. They can get filled with pocket lint and stuff like that. So a magazine could shut down, or in some holsters that I have, or some cases, just the mag button gets pushed just a little bit. I've had this happen quite a bit. So the mag gets pushed just like that, so that it's not readily apparent that that magazine isn't in there, and it will stay there for one shot, but it won't pick up a fresh round. So you have one shot and then you have a malfunction. I've heard stories like Clint Smith told a story in one of the videos that he did. One time he had a magazine base plate get ripped off. So he got out of a car and the whole magazine just exploded everywhere, which is something you see in competition quite a bit. We see magazines come apart all the time. This is some of the foundation of my distrust of magazines. So he needed a spare magazine, not because he completely exhausted the gun from shooting it. It's just that the magazine failed. So the two biggest points of failure in the whole thing are the ammo and the magazines themselves. So as a person who shoots a lot, I just inherently don't trust, or am suspicious of, ammunition and magazines. So I carry more of them. Even if I had a larger capacity gun, I still carry another magazine, all right? If I carry a Glock 19 or I carry this EDC X9, I still carry a second magazine, not for the ammo capacity, but because I don't trust ammo and magazines, period. Just food for thought. Now, if that being the case, these magazines are easier to have in and around you. This magazine itself is easier to conceal on its own, like in my pocket or in some kind of mag pouch. It doesn't have a whole lot of profile to it, where double stack magazines do, and they do have a blocky structure, so they have a shape that is harder to hide by comparison. So I like single stack magazines just because they're easier to conceal themselves in having a second one. So one of the things I have is just this leather sleeve. This is a pocket holster, essentially, for a magazine. This is one of the first concealed carry equipment things I ever bought from a company that's out of business now, although any leather maker worth his salt could make this thing. And I'll probably ask 5-Shot if he'll make me some at some point, but it's just a simple leather sheath. I've used it for years. Really what this does, it helps keep the magazine somewhat upright in my pocket, so when I go into my pocket, it comes out. And even if it comes out altogether, I can just kind of shuck it off. But the main thing it's doing is it's keeping all that pocket lint and dust and dirt out of here, which will shut down a magazine. So essentially, if you must, think of this as a magazine condom. That's why I have it in the sheath. But with a lot of pants that I wear now, like I'm a big Vortex guy. Vortex has a lot of the sneaky pockets kind of built into it, and they have one kind of at my 5 o'clock. Remember, I'm left-handed. So at my 5 o'clock where I would want a spare magazine, they kind of have a good place for this to fit, and it doesn't bulge too much. That's where I have it a lot of times. Or very recently, I started using, this is a tier 1 concealed. When Hunter Constantine started doing his bounty, started getting some more of these mag pouches just to compete from concealed. So I do actually appendix carry one of these. I've been playing around with this a little bit, and we'll get more into positions and carry more often than not. But generally speaking, I have been playing around with this inside the waistband mag pouch recently. More often than not, though, I use this sleeve right here, and I will actually put it in a cargo pocket somewhere, all right, just to have it around. But that's just kind of some baseline stuff. on some of my choices around the guns themselves. So I primarily carry 1911s in whatever caliber that gun happens to be offered in. I usually carry a spare magazine with good ammo, good hollow point ammo in it. Don't much care which kind it is as long as it's proven. And we get into that. I don't really have, you're going to see here, like if you came for the economy 1911 carry video, this is not that. All right. I tend to, from a pretty early on when I'm buying a gun, I tend to try and buy the best one I can afford at the time. And I have enough of them now that I'm really only adding to my collection if it's something nice. I would rather have a few nice guns than a bunch of shitty ones. So I tend to invest in what I perceive to be good ones. If there are some that are less expensive than the ones we're going to talk about here, and they're perfectly fine. Like we've said in other videos, I'm perfectly fine with anything that Springfield makes. All right. I just don't happen to have really any here today. So, but here's what you came for. So one I've carried the most, continue to carry the most, is a full-size 5-inch government of various flavors, but lots of 5-inch government size 1911s is what I carry a lot. If I can, this is normally what I carry, and especially now that I've done a lot of appendix carry, this is one of the guns that actually kind of conceals the best for me. Now that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? You look at this thing, you're like, how is that concealed? Well, the way, because it has a longer profile, that leverage helps tuck it in a bit more, and it rides straight up and down. Some of the smaller guns, you get into something like your 43Xs, because they're so short, they're easy, they kind of have a sharper pivot point, so they tend to stick out a bit more for me. I don't have really much less burden or discomfort from a smaller gun, and the bigger guns in good belt and holster systems, they're just as comfortable for me, and if I actually have to use them, I would rather have this than that. So gun that I probably have the most hours on carrying is this one. This is a Nighthawk GRP in 45. I bought this when I worked at the gun store. I also bought it a bit as a sales prop. We sold a lot of high-end 1911s at that store. They continue to, but it was easier as a salesperson for someone who's investing in a gun like this. It's easier to have a conversation with them and them to take you seriously if they can see that you've invested your own money in it. So when I would have one of these on my hip and I could kind of reference the one that I bought, it gave me a little bit of legitimacy. So when I had the opportunity to pick this one up, I did, and it was the primary gun that I carried in and around that era. In that era, I was required to open carry at the store. So I would open carry it like this through the winter months, and then in the summer when it's light out more than it's dark out, I would jettison the light and use a non-light bearing holster, carry the same gun. And so just for, a solid 5 years, the better part of 5 years, this was the primary gun that I carried in almost exactly this configuration. I still carry it today though, because it works great in an appendix roll. I actually pulled it out of a holster to make this video, and adding the flashlight to it actually helps it lay flatter for me. So I actually do carry a full-size gun with the light appendix because it helps conceal it a bit more, which is totally counterintuitive, and we'll get to that in another video. But especially this time of year, filming this around Christmas time, it's actually Christmas Day that I'm filming this. round about this time of year when you're adulting after work, it's dark outside, so I tend to have a light. Now, times of year where it's lighter outside, I feel less and less need to have a light on, so I'll float to some other stuff, especially if I'm wearing lighter clothing. And just as an enthusiast, sometimes you just feel like carrying something different. All right, so most hours on and continue to use, I mean, you know, this one's loaded right now. All right, so going right back into the rotation as soon as we turn the camera off. Another one that I have a lot of time on, this is one of the first ones that I got. This is a Dan Wesson Commander bobtail. At the time, in the early 2000s, this was a popular option because dudes wanted a kind of full-sized grip, and then they would bob this corner off. So essentially, they use an officer-sized mainspring housing, and then they kind of nip this corner off, which would typically have, what's the harshest corner on here? Typically, there's a sharp corner there, and when this is in a holster and your shirt is draped over it, that's the first thing that pokes out. So guys were trying to break this edge, and Ed Brown did that with a bobtail. All right, and then Dan Wesson was kind of the poor man's Ed Brown at the time. I think I picked this gun up for something like $800. Those days are gone. But at the time, this was one of the early additions to my collection, and that it was going to be a primary carry gun for me because I wanted that bobtail. It was super cool at the time. As time went on and I concealed more, it didn't really play out that way. It seemed like a better idea than it was. I do revisit it from time to time. Like before I got the Nighthawk, this was a gun that I open carried at the store. It's kind of quick and handy to have around. I have drawn it before, for real. I have shot it for real. Whatever you just pictured in your head is a cooler story than what actually happened. But I have drawn this one. I have used it, and it's a good gun. It's not terribly awesome to shoot, so I don't shoot it a whole lot, especially since I got out of IDPA. I haven't shot it very much. I shot it a couple times at like the end of the year match and stuff, and it always seemed like a more fun idea when I was driving to the match than when I was driving home from the match. So it's loaded a lot, shot little, just how it is. Coming out of that gun and carrying this one a lot, was super excited for the Wesson EDC X9 to come out. And so this is one of the first ones, not like the first ones, but of the first batch that the store I worked at got. I think we ordered 5 to start. This was one of the initial 5, and was super stoked to get this. I had actually started working at Vortex by the time it was delivered. Concealed carried this one quite a bit. Since then, I would say this has been one of my primaries. Aluminum frame, so it's lighter. If anything, I think it's product improved 1911. Everything that people say is an advantage or desirable about a Glock 19 or 23 in this instance, I think they have incorporated that into a 1911-esque design with the EDC X9. They used a smaller diameter, a sleeker magazine to get capacity in it. So I have a better contour, smaller frame, better contoured grip than a traditional 2011. Holds 15 plus 1. A little bit more concealed, bobbed hammer situation in the back here, kind of the Hackathorn special style in the back here. And I do actually like this quite a bit, more so than the traditional. It's a little bit more abbreviated, and this can be pokey sometimes. There is a gun, well, like here's a gun. I really want to carry this gun more than I do, but just the way that the shape of this beaver tail just doesn't quite do it for me. I've even had it deburr or dehorned a little bit aftermarket, trying to break that edge, and still it's just kind of, this one doesn't really work for me. This one's going to be more of a game gun, especially now that Limb 10's allowing optics into their competition. This is going to go back on the competition gun side of the house, which is something else I should mention too. I tend to keep competition guns separate from carry guns, again, because they're loaded, but also because they're loaded, I tend to like play with these the least. And so if I think I'm going to be using guns in matches, I tend not to have them in a carry rotation and keep them separate. So that's probably what's happening to this one. This one is probably going to be more for limited 10 competition than carry, although I do use it, I do carry it, or have carried it quite a bit, like when I'm traveling and stuff like that, just as a fun functional piece. But full size 1911, this one's a bull barrel 9mm, so I have carried this one quite a bit too. With the right holster, I do like it, but it has its challenges. So back to this one, they cleaned up the back here a little bit, made it a little bit more concealable. Has an ambi safety, which I need. Improved extractor. If there was a weakness in the 1911, it is the extractor, which is essentially a leaf spring. So here we have an external extractor, and then the rest of it is just a well-built pistol. Again, aluminum frame, so it's a bit lighter. It is not one for one a surrogate 1911. It does feel different. It has a little bit of Beretta 92-esque-ness to it, in that it sits a little bit taller over bore than a 1911 will. A 1911 feels like it sits deeper in your hand than this does. I do like it, but it is different. When I draw it and get a sight picture, it feels a little bit different. So something to be aware of on these, but I do really like these, and if you're looking at one, you're willing to spend the coin for one, definitely worth your consideration. As you can see, this one's got plenty of wear on it, from primarily Kydex holsters. It just be like that. But as you can see, this one's been carried quite a bit, and continue to use it for that. Where do we go from here? So, getting into other guns, if I were to rate them 1, 2, 3, those ones that we've shown you are probably the ones that I have the most time on. So, number 1, number 2, number 3, as far as mileage over the last 15 years in carry guns. But everything we're getting to now is a bit nuanced. I don't really go much smaller than this ever, again, because I don't feel less burdened by carrying a smaller gun, but I do feel like I have less capability. So I'm just not as attracted to them. A lot of people, when they buy a carry gun, they look at something like this. They're trying to be as least encumbered as possible. So they think smaller gun is going to do that for them. But these don't carry the best for me. Like I said, just because they get kind of pitchy, and so they're almost harder to hide than bigger guns. And with good holsters, good belt systems, I don't really feel like you're saving a whole lot. Pocket guns are really just that. I think it's an item of last resort. If I'm carrying this in that pocket sleeve that you saw in another video, it is either because I'm required to wear a tire that won't accommodate one of these other guns, or it's a very sensitive or non-permissive environment where cost, the penalty for getting caught or recognized as carrying has a very large downside. So if it's maximum concealability, I'll use something like that. I have used something like that when I've had other jobs in the past, and it was the best I could do. But it's only only something I do when it's the best I can do. Smallest I will go is something like this. This is a Dan Wesson ECO, currently discontinued. This is a 3.5-inch officer size gun. Now, I had a Springfield EMP back in the day for IDPA bug gun competition. Our IDPA club did a bunch of backup gun side matches, and so I thought an EMP would be the ticket. Turns out I never really did particularly well with that particular gun. Carried it quite a bit, and I don't know, I just never connected with it, so I ended up trading it for something else. When I worked in the store, I always liked these though, and actually on the Arms and Arms YouTube channel, you'll see some video reviews we did where we actually shot these. I shot it in 45 and still feel the same way about it now as I did then. Don't love it in 45. I shot it in 9mm and I was about that. So I had an opportunity very recently to pick up one of these and add it to my stable. And so it's not something that I use a whole lot, but like I say, if you're going into a sensitive environment or you're required to wear attire that's a little bit less accommodating to concealed carry, that's what I look at, this filling that kind of role. I mean, this is like PPK sized, and it's the smallest I would look at going. Your abbreviated capacity, you only get 9 rounds, or 9 rounds of 9mm in here, and it's aluminum frame, so it's lighter and stuff like that. But I kind of think of it like a lot of times it's places that our women make us go. Am I right? All right. So generally speaking, if I can't just wear like the rigs that I normally want to wear, I got to wear something a little bit more discreet. I do have this. It's not something I use a lot. This is the smallest I would go in terms of 1911, and this is probably the only one I would buy in a production level gun and trust. If you're going to get a small 1911 like this, really I would be shopping in the semi-custom realm just to make sure that you get one that works, because the cyclic rate on these is so fast in that the slide speed for the springs that they use, it's a very narrow window for the slide to cycle properly and give the magazine enough time to present the cartridge. So these are actually a pretty fine-tuned little rig for them to work correctly. Every ECO that I've ever seen, every Dan Wesson ECO I've ever seen, works great. So I was willing to buy one. But I would scrutinize officer-sized guns, which is officer in terms of 1911 is 3 inches in barrel, and then abbreviated grip. However, in and around that time, there was also a type of gun that I was always intrigued with, and they called it a CCO. Now, if I would have done enough research, I would have looked up what that meant. But Dan Wesson had a model called a CCO that was essentially commander size, so 4.25 inch barrel with a full size, or with a full size grip is commander. A CCO is a commander slide, 4.25 slide, and an officer length grip, right? So a shortened grip. See there? CCO. Now, unfortunately, the Dan Wesson CCO has been discontinued, but I got the hots for an Alchemy. Alchemy makes a Prime Compact. Prime Compact is a CCO. So, with some clever angles here, pretty accurate representation of how much shorter it is. I'll put it in my hand here so you can see. But see how, remember when we were talking about the bobtail? It's a full-size grip, especially look right here. All right, full-size grip, abbreviated corner. All right, you don't get that full feeling in your hand. Am I right, ladies? Here with the square edge, you get a little bit fuller feeling. I still get a full grip, but you see how there's nothing extra hanging out there. I feel like I get a better grip on this and better control shootability wise. I prefer shooting this over this, just because that square corner, you know, it's not much, but it is something. And so I prefer this. I prefer to give up a little bit of capacity for times where I need a little bit more concealable grip profile than to maintain the full capacity and take that bobbed grip. So this is something I've started carrying fairly recently. Actually going to pick up another one because one of these I think is going to get cut for a red dot. But a CCO is something I've added into my rotation as well. This particular one's in 9mm. So it has all the sensitivities of 9mm, but if you have good magazines, you feed it scrutinized ammo, works really well. Really like this one. And you know, Alchemy, they have kind of that olden timey time retro look, which I'm a 30-year-old old guy. I just dig it a little bit, and my buddy Travis gives me a lot of shit for that. But I don't know, I just like the kind of the retro style of them, and so picked one of these up, and I actually picked this one up off Gunbroker. I have another one that I bought new on the way here shortly, but CCO is something that I'm using more of in kind of my rotation as time goes on. This is more like in a casual setting that I would use this, or the analogy I use would be there's kind of what you wear on a daily basis, like the Monday to Friday, like going out the door stuff, and then there's the gonna go run a quick errand, or casual dress on a Saturday. Like, you just don't want to put on all of your stuff. All right, so this is a little bit more my casual leisure time when I put on something like this. Monday to Friday, going out into the world doing adult stuff, I tend to carry one of these. But it's a seasons of life thing. It's day to day. It moves around. But that is kind of a snapshot of guns that I carry in and around on a daily basis. There are others, and there will probably be more. I didn't show them all to you, and I'm a gun guy, so I'm sure there will be more in the future. But to give you an idea of what I like and what I carry, there is a quick, not even quick, but a brief flyby on some of the guns that I carry on a regular basis, and kind of how I approach gun selection for concealed carry. So if you have any questions on any of this that we should get into deeper, all kinds of stuff to talk about in the world of carry guns, shoot them down below. But this is a good place to start. But you can pick whatever you want. I pick whatever I want. And when I can pick whatever I want, I pick a big one. That's just me. See you guys.